Hey, Stu, would you do me a favor? Would you give me a list of all of the car companies that are going to be hit by the tariffs beginning next week? And we'll give you these car companies here in just a minute. But I want you to be prepared for something. If you're in the neighborhood and looking for a new car, this would be the week to buy it. If you buy anything that is foreign made, this would be the week to buy it, because as of next week, they're going to go through the roof in cost. 25% tariff on all foreign-made cars. And already, if you go into a showroom this weekend, you're probably going to have a hard time getting it or doing any kind of negotiation on it, because they're going to charge you full price, because the business of selling foreign cars right now is at a peak, because everybody who wanted to buy a foreign car is in there right now going, I got to buy it before this tariff comes in. Now, here's the part that I want you to really understand. This is going to do what COVID did to used cars. So if you're thinking about buying a used car and you want a foreign car, then you better buy that one right now. Because as of next week, when the price of all of these cars, the new ones, are through the roof, most people are going to say, I'm not paying that I'm not going to pay an extra 25% for that new car. I'm just not going to do it. And so they'll stop buying it. But if you have to buy a car, you're going to buy a gently used car, a pre-owned car. And those are going to become scarce, because those will not fall under the tariff. So it's going to be exactly like it was with COVID. You're not going to be able to get the new car. Just for a different reason. I mean, you could, but you're not going to pay for it like that. Most people won't. So you'll go out and try to buy a used car, but those used cars are going to become more and more expensive. I was just talking to somebody about this, and they were like, "That sounds like a good investment. Maybe I should go out and buy. Maybe I should go out and buy a bunch of used cars." I don't know. I don't know if that's a good investment or not. But I just wanted you to think about that things are going to change next week, at least for a little while. And gosh, if you're a car dealer and you sell foreign cars, I feel for you, brother. I feel for you. Hopefully this thing will turn around quickly. Hopefully, Europe will break before we break. But it's going to be a tough ride. But if you need to buy a car, right now would be the time to do it. I had horrible pain in my hands. I had a hard time moving them. I could barely work with them. I couldn't write or type or anything. I tried everything. Then I found Relief Factor. Relief Factor is a 100% drug-free supplement developed by doctors, and it's safe to take daily. It made a real impact for me and so many others. Try their 3-week quick start now, $19.95 at relieffactor.com. All right.
You want this list here, Glenn, before we move on?
Go ahead.
So, first of all, pretty much every company imports some of their cars.
Right.
So that includes, like Ford, for example. About 20% of the cars they sell are imported. Honda is about 35%. General Motors about 40%. That's imported. So you think General Motors is an American?
Motors?
Yeah, you think of them as an American company. A lot of them too it might be imported from Mexico, right?
Right.
So it's not necessarily from China or whatever, but the highest percentages of imported vehicles sold here in the United States, Volvo is about 90%, Mazda and Volkswagen about 80%, Hyundai about 70%, and then Mercedes about 60%. So those are going to be the most
But you have to
effective.
look at like BMW doesn't BMW and Volkswagen, or is it Audi? They own like a billion different brands. Then they just gobble up a whole bunch of stuff.
Sure, yeah. Each one of these companies has a bunch of brands under it for sure. So that's going to be the situation. And remember too, a couple things on tariffs. Like, first of all, the tariff is on basically what it cost you, not what the final retail value is. So it's not necessarily 25% on top of let's say if it's a $50,000 car, it's 25% of $50,000. If the car takes $30,000 to produce, the tariff's paid on that number. So it isn't quite as high.
So it's only 25% on $30,000, not $50,000.
I'm trying to be helpful here, Glenn. As you know, I oppose all of these policies.
I know. It's just going to hurt a lot of people. It's just going to crush a lot of people.
Will it even go into effect is a big question.
I don't know.
Donald Trump has more than half of the tariffs he's promised have been paused or delayed. So we don't know if it's going to actually happen. Could be a negotiation tactic. But you're right. I mean, because to your point, hey, let's start a business on used cars. What if this tariff doesn't go into effect next week?
Exactly right.
Like, I don't know.
Exactly right.
It's so hard to tell. But this,
exactly right.
I will say, is the weakness of this approach. Because companies have no freaking idea how to run their businesses as of next week. And by the way, the reciprocal tariffs are supposed to go into effect on April 2nd as well, which is also next week. So a lot of this stuff's going on. We just don't know what it means yet. And for any company that imports anything, this is a real stress on how they run their business. Remember, it's American importers that are paying these taxes, even though you wind up paying them eventually. On the business side of that, they're like, well, what's my cost of business next week? Is it $100 or is it $125? I don't know.
Don't know. I have a friend who sells foreign cars, and he is just like, he's like, I have no idea. He's like, right now, it's a feast. Right now, everybody is coming in and buying everything because they don't want to avoid these tariffs. He said, but I feel bad because, I mean, they may not have had to pay the tight price that they paid this week if the tariffs don't exist. He said, but they won't be able to afford it if the tariffs do exist. And so I don't know. And he said, and nobody's really thinking about the used cars. He said, used cars are going to go through the roof.
Yeah. And
we'll be in exactly the same situation we were in COVID if this actually happens. and so
we don't know.
Go ahead, invest in those used cars.
Yeah.
Go buy a bunch of them this weekend.
And Glenn, it's interesting too when it's not just foreign cars. Like, for example, let's say you want to sell what's going to happen if this goes into effect? Foreign cars are going to go up. The foreign used car market is going to be aggressively higher. By the way, it's still way higher than it was pre-COVID. I mean, there was that spike. I just did a show on this week, which is all the things that changed through COVID. Some of them spiked and came back to normal. Many of them spiked and never came back to normal. We've never had, it's the new normal, if you will. Used cars is one of those things. They're still way higher than they were before COVID. And if this happens, if you were a type of person who was buying American before this, right? Like I own an American car. When I sell it, it's the American used car market that's not going to be going crazy. Right? It's the foreign cars. So the people that bought foreign cars before are going to be oddly rewarded with this policy when they try to sell their car on the used market because those cars are going to be likely more scarce. So, I mean, there's so many factors that play into mind. And the other part of this, Glenn, is almost every time this is attempted, if you are, let's say you're selling an American car, you're selling your car for $100,000, your competition selling for $100,000, they get a 25% effective tariff. Let's say they raise their prices. They got to raise it $220,000 to compensate for those tariffs. What are you going to do as a business person? Now your closest competition is $20,000 priced higher than you. Do you keep your car at $100,000? Or do you sit back and say, I think we can get 108, 110 for this thing now, right? We're still going to be way below our competition. Why wouldn't we get a little bit of extra profit there?
That's why we need government to step in for price gouging.
Yes. Price control, centralized economy, it always works out well.
It's so good. It's so good.